Content in this episode might not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, which giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. That was 1 Corinthians 15, verses 55 through 57. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Thinking Well podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kyle.
Hello, Kyle.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
I am good. It feels weird being on this side of it.
It feels weird being on this side of it.
Yeah, but I'm almost all for it. Well, today we are doing it this way because we are having another Meet the Members episode. And just to recap Meet the Members, this is episodes completely devoted to testimonies of Christian believers, showing how God's providence has worked throughout a believer's life, and just to kind of show to other people how no testimony is boring when it comes to Christ, whether it be an action-packed testimony or just a simple testimony. It all includes God, and it is all pointing to Him in one way or another. And so that's why we have these episodes to show believers and non-believers alike that what God can do in a believer's life. So today we have in our Meet the Members episode our very own Kyle Reeves. And Kyle Reeves, sir, I hand it off to you. Yeah.
Similar to other Meet the Members, I guess we'll just do a testimony kind of / life story. And, if you want to ask me any questions or interview me, expound on anything, feel free, Nick. But yeah, we'll just start in the beginning. I was born in the summer of 95 to two loving parents, Southern Arizona. And, nothing crazy. We kind of always been plugged into our local church. Even there, it was kind of neat. All our family at one point that was there. Grandparents, a few aunt and uncles, all their kids, so all my cousins, everybody all went to the same church, which was kind of neat. Growing up that way. And but yeah, my parents, as far as I can remember, were always pretty serious about going to church and making sure their kids went to church and getting involved. I think they were part of the Awana program there at Victory Baptist Church in Casa Grande, and or Casa Grande if you're if you want to call it that, if you're a local. But yeah, I mean, nothing crazy, nothing like that. I can remember going to that church, with friends and family, and good times. I mean, just a lot of community, a lot of unity there for sure. And I was saved in that church, so I was saved at a pretty young age. At 7, I was saved. I can remember the pastor, Terry Green is his name. He's still the pastor there at Victory Baptist Church. He did a message or like a series of messages on salvation or something like that. I can remember that. It's funny. I don't recall like every detail, every like specific event that led to it. But it definitely led to curiosity. It definitely led to me asking questions to my parents and, about what is salvation and what is hell. And, I think that's what it was. I think he mentioned something about being saved from hell or something. I think he mentioned that in part of his sermon. Anyway, next few days, started asking questions. And I think I got to a point where my parents recognized that, like, okay, he's there. And, they called, Brother Green, Terry Green back over, and I was, he led me to Christ right there yeah, in the back room of that house in 2002.
Amen.
Yeah. So, I mean, didn't live this, super long, crazy life, and gotta say, I was saved, probably as early as my, dumb little brain could figure it out, could understand what was going on.
Well, that's the beauty of the gospel, right? It's so simple that a child can understand it.
And most times it's easier that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I pray that my girls can have that same kind of experience and not have to live, any extended period of time without knowing,
Sure.
right, if they're saved. But so I praise God for that. And, as we'll go through this life story, this testimony, like, there'll definitely be times of doubt and kind of questioning that whole experience and then, the doubts kind of doubling down with not really being able to remember everything. And so, like, we'll get there. But I mean, I can sit here today and say that was definitely the pivotal point in which it happened. But yeah, I mean, so, I'm a kid, right? There's not really much going on. We're there. We're going to church. Parents are still serving in the church. We ended up moving here to Fort Worth in 2004. So a couple years later, around 9. And I can remember that definitely more vividly. I definitely wasn't on board with that as a 9-year-old.
Sure.
Like I had a say in it, but I can definitely recall not being super happy about leaving my family and my friends. And, to me, it was, hey, we're leaving everything that I've known for 9 years, and, my aunt and uncles and my grandparents that I was super close with, and my cousins and everything, and all that life. And we're going into this unknown area, that, I mean, I have a little bit of family, about an hour and a half west of here, but, we're going to go over here, and it's a question mark, and it's a new life. And I wasn't super happy about that. I can remember that for sure. But, yeah, we got here. We started looking for churches almost immediately. So, props to my parents in that regard. They knew that they wanted to find a good, independent, Bible believing Baptist church. That's what they were pretty sure on that. So we toured several around here, and that's a good thing about kind of Fort Worth and where we are. There's no lack of churches to visit.
Right.
But we were actually recommended Lake Worth Baptist from so Terry Green, the pastor of the other church in Arizona. He and our members, the Flats, they were pretty close. They knew each other. And
okay.
So he kind of recommended that through them, and so we gave it a shot. We weren't too far from it really at all. So we started coming here in probably say the fall of 04 or maybe early 05. And we instantly kind of knew it was kind of where we wanted to be. I mean, it was different than other churches. It was a little, definitely smaller, more intimate. It was more friendly. We could kind of tell that it was more genuine for sure. So yeah, we started coming here. Probably 10 at this point. Started coming here. This is back when Brother Jerry was still the pastor in 05. And yeah, been coming ever since. We became members here. At this point, I kind of skipped over it, but I was saved and baptized into that church in Casa Grande, Arizona. And so we just kind of transferred membership over here. So yeah, been a part of this church, been a member of this church for a long time, like a very, very long time.
So because I know when your dad was on here, he gave his testimony about, what they were looking for in a church, and, they were wanting someplace to serve, someplace that had that, dynamic of, friendliness and closeness as churches should be. But as a 9-year-old, I understand that's probably not where your thought process was at. So when it came to going to all these different churches as a 9-year-old boy in a state you've never been to or have rarely been to in your life, what was it like? What set Lake Worth apart from the other ones for you?
Yeah, it's I can remember like the kids program. We call it Kid Venture. We still do it today. I can remember that. Um, you know, as a 9-year-old, I wasn't really looking for like I wasn't checking boxes on like, well, doctrinally we need to be here, and
Right.
it's the feel needs to be here. Like, what's the vibe? And like, no, it was just kind of being dragged to church. But I think a lot of it was feeling welcomed, having kids around me that were normal and we got along with, and it was sincere. I mean,
Yeah.
the people of this church really kind of put their arms around us for sure. And I mean, I can remember feeling that. Yeah, I can remember that being the case. But yeah, I mean, after that, so about 10. Um, at a very young age, probably even earlier than that, I started really getting into or wanting to get into like drumming,
Mm.
like percussion. I can't really tell you where it started. It wasn't like I, saw like a video of like a drummer or like, and it was like, oh, that's gonna be me. Like I just, like I don't know, like some kids want to be a astronaut or a fireman or whatever. I wanted to be a drummer in a rock band. I was just like, that was like it. That was the coolest thing there was. So like I can remember, I can remember getting started on I don't know if you guys are familiar with Lincoln Logs,
Mm-hmm.
but they're like these little play logs that have like little notches in them, and you're
Right.
supposed to build like little log cabins and stuff. And there was one Lincoln log that was different than the rest of them. It was the longer piece. It had 4 notches in it, so it was probably pretty close, like 2 feet long, like maybe 18 inches. And there was 2 of them that were just always missing because I hid them in my room because they were my drumsticks, and I would hit pillows, and that's how it started.
Right.
Well, as I got a little bit older, we're here now in Texas, and as I got a little bit older, I think my parents definitely kind of saw that, like, hey, like this could be something that like if he's interested in it, like let's maybe fan that flame a little bit. And I'm happy they did. I mean, they bought me my first drum kit when I was like 11 or 12, and it was a very cheap kit. I mean, I know why they did it, but they put in the house. They props to them. They let me play it for like an hour a day, and I was not good, and I was very loud, and all self-taught basically. I mean, I did as I got into middle school, I did band there, which definitely helped with some of the technique and some of the kind of math behind drumming and what it is. But all self-taught. I mean, a lot of it was just listening to music and saying, "Oh, that's cool. Like, how did they do that?" And then trying to replicate it, and then having the tool to do it was nice. But yeah. So I mean, I got started there. I can remember around this time, kind of starting middle school, like 12 or 13 at this point. Started. We used to play music up here upstairs in our youth department. Before Wednesday service, we'd play like 2 or 3 songs of like contemporary, Christian worship, whatever, for the kids, which was kind of cool. Right, we had an electric drum kit up there, and we would come early. This is back in the day, back when our pastor now, Brother Zach, and his wife were like the youth leaders, youth teachers up there. This is, I mean, 17 years ago. I mean, 18 years ago.
Wow.
So this is before their kids and before they, became, pastors and stuff of this church. But yeah, I used to kind of hitch a ride with them every Wednesday. We'd, hit Chick-fil-A or something, and then or sometimes it's Taco Bueno. We'd come up here and then we'd rehearse with, their band members, and that was kind of our routine every Wednesday, right? It was kind of cool. So yeah, me and Zach kind of go way back. But so yeah, that was kind of my first. I mean, if you want to call it serving, I guess I would. Like, yeah, it wasn't necessarily kind of the same caliber as what we're doing today, but I think that's where the heart of it started. But yeah, so I mean, so that's going on. I enter middle school. I wasn't a great student. I never really was. And as we'll go on, I was definitely maybe in an environment that didn't help that. But going into middle school, wasn't really a great student. I tried, but it's just I don't know. Like, I just always had better things to do, or I thought I did. I don't know. I just never really was a great student. But I can remember in middle school is kind of like where the first big kind of pivot happened. I was I can remember being introduced to pornography in middle school, probably like 13 or 14 years old. And I struggled with that for a long time. I mean, for years and years and years, struggle with that. And it's hard because it's, like it was like a secret sin, right? And you struggle with it, but you're still coming to church. You're still playing, drums. You're putting on like the good Christian, kid mask here, but it could be further from the truth, right? Elsewhere. So that kind of started kind of a downward spiral throughout middle school. Definitely kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily hanging out with the wrong crowd, but definitely being influenced more than being an influencer. And my parents kind of saw that. They kind of witnessed that kind of happening. And I was enrolled to go to a local high school here, and I was going to do band, and I was going to like summer camps to do drum line stuff. And they decided to kind of pull me from that and put me into a private Christian high school here locally. Looking back on it, and I wasn't really happy about that either when it happened. All my friends in middle school, I mean, people that I'm still friends with, they all went to, this high school, and I was supposed to go with them. And, I didn't want to be yanked from that and put into this much smaller, unfamiliar place, right?
So your second time in life being ripped from some place.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Like. So
I wasn't very happy about that. Looking back on it, I think it was the right call, but I wasn't very happy about it at the time.
Yeah.
But the school was great. I mean, the school was fine. Definitely at first, they, definitely believed in the word, and we even had classes dedicated to just strictly Bible, and it was great. I mean, like I can still tie back to some of the knowledge I have now from those classes. Like it was good. But something kind of happened, kind of like halfway through high school. Is like the school was definitely kind of taking a nosedive. Like they were heavily tied to the church that was also on campus, and they just, for whatever reason, I don't know if I'll ever know, but they just had issues retaining teachers. Quality of teachers went way down. There were some scandals in the church that kind of trickled down into the school. So it quickly turned into an environment that was just like, it was just lackluster for education. So, I mean, it had some pros, right? I think I think my parents definitely saw it and made the right choice to pull me from an environment that could have been pretty bad. But I think on the other side of it, I think eventually, and they had no way of knowing this, but eventually the education suffered because of it.
How was that influence? Because I know some people who are Christian believers who at a point in their life also went to Christian private school. How was that dynamic of influence? Like, how did that change for you? Because I know that in some cases, the dynamic and influence in a Christian private school can almost be worse than in a secular public school. So how is that for you?
Yeah, it's what I'll say is I think teenagers in high school will be terrible and do bad things no matter what school you're in,
Sure.
no matter what the environment is. So, I mean, there was definitely stuff. I mean, was I exposed to less things? Maybe. Hard to say. I mean, there was definitely stuff that happened in the school that shouldn't have been happening, and stuff that we were exposed to with other, classmates, running off to do things or skipping school or, but I think for the most part, yeah, I would say for the most part, it was probably diminished from what I would have saw at a public high school, or at least the possibility was probably lessened. The environment probably didn't allow it. But there was definitely stuff. I mean, like, it's just, I think every high school, no matter what it is, how big it is. I mean, this is a pretty small high school we're talking about. I mean, I was going at, planning on going to a high school that had over 1,000 students going, and now it's like in high school we had maybe 40, 30 on some years. So it's just a huge change, right? But it wasn't all bad. I mean, it was, I got some good friendships out of it. We had chapel every Wednesday, so we still got, sometimes it was good messages. Sometimes it was, you could tell it was like this teacher was asked last second to do it. You could definitely tell. But we had, music before that I would play drums in, and sometimes I'd play piano before too. Sometimes I would sing. It was kind of like I was, even as like a young underclassman, I was kind of given a lot of trust and a lot of good faith. That was nice. But so I mean, yeah. So went all 4 years there. Ended up graduating from that school. Got a high school diploma. Not sure how I passed, but I did. I can remember. I'll say this, and I'll stop bad mathing the school. But I think it was interesting. Like when we should have been doing like physics. Like I can remember like a science class. Like your senior science class for me was physics, and we should have been doing our curriculum, but we were we weren't doing that. We were playing Texas Hold'em poker, and I got really good at Texas Hold'em poker because we all we did. And it got to the point where it was just the wheels kind of fell off. I mean, like my physics teacher was 23 and I was 18, and he was like a buddy of mine. Like we used to go to concerts together, and it's just like, okay, like what are we doing here? Like I'm looking back on it, and I'm like, it was sweet when it was happening. It was awesome, but like I look back and I'm like, what in the world was happening? So it deteriorated pretty far, and it's I think and I look back on it, and like I don't blame my parents for that. I think they had no way of knowing what it would have turned into, because at first it was solid, it was decent, and then it got to the point where it was like, okay, like do we pull them out and put them in like high school, like regular high school, and like how do the credits match up? Like there was some weird some differences that would have made me like redo a grade or so. So they, we decided to keep me there. This whole thing, but saved me from certain things, but probably didn't foster the best educational environment. And then, through that, so I'm in high school now, still struggling with pornography. That never really stopped. But I started dating this girl, and I wouldn't be able to tell my testimony or my life story without mentioning this. This is pretty pivotal, kind of going from high school to young adulthood. But I started dating this girl that I've known forever, who still lived in Arizona, like long term, like family friend, and I thought I had it made. Dated her, basically all throughout high school, like three out of those 4 years, and as we got closer to graduating, I thought for sure, like, hey, this is the one that God wants me to be with. This is gonna be my wife. She was about a year and a half younger than me. It's crazy to think like I was thinking that way as an 18-year-old. Like I'm a child.
Yeah.
But everything in my stupid little 18-year-old mind made sense. Hey, I know she's a Christian girl. I've known her forever. I've known her parents forever. Her parents and my parents are good friends. Her grandparents and my grandparents are good friends.
Boxes were being checked. It was making sense to you.
For sure.
Yeah.
And, I decided that after I graduated that I was going to move back out to Arizona. It all seemed to make sense. It was where she was. It was where my family was. I grew up here after that, so I was okay with it. But like, it was always like, I wasn't really happy about the move in the first place.
Right.
So it seemed to make sense to me. And I fought tooth and nail with my parents about it. Them trying to speak wisdom to me, them trying to just have me slow down and think about it. And I wasn't having any of it. I was like most, I would assume most teenagers still living with their parents after they graduate, pretty rebellious and kind of tired of having your parents tell you what to do. So yeah, I left. My grandparents would do this thing most years where they would come from Arizona here for a couple weeks and then take us back over there for a couple weeks, and then they would come back and then they would go on, east to go see family in Illinois or Florida, whatever. So that year, 2014, that's when I graduated. They came and I ended up driving my car back with most everything I owned in the car, out there with them, and I stayed out there. And I look back on that now. This is going to kind of start like the first like big regret that I have that I wish I could take back. Because I fought with my parents about it like tooth and nail, man. It got ugly. It got real ugly. I was dead set on it. Like you couldn't stop me. So I left, and I mean, I didn't know this until later. But like my parents let me go. I mean, they fought me on it. They knew there was nothing they could do to keep me here. But I left, and my mom is bawling her eyes out. My dad's having to comfort her, and meanwhile I'm gone, and it's just things I think about now, and I'm like, I could have saved a lot of trouble. I think back on it now, and it still breaks my heart. Just the stupidity of it, and we've repaired that relationship for sure, but I can't take that back.
Right.
Like I can never take that back. But so we're there in Arizona. I'm living there now. I'm working at Chick-fil-A, and I think I got another job at like a movie theater place or whatever, and still dating this girl, and everything's going fine. I mean, it's like 19 years old. I mean, like I'm just kind of working and hanging out, and like it wasn't a bad time for the first like 9 months. There with family, seeing them. I mean, it's everything that I quote unquote wanted.
Yeah.
And things started to take a turn, and the relationship started falling apart. And for a long time, I mean, for years and years and years, I blamed her, and I resented her, and I mean, I hated her. But I mean, I look back on it, and I'm like, I don't know if there's a single thing she did that I didn't provoke. I don't know if there was a single thing she did that I wouldn't have done if I was treated that way. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there was a single thing she did that as a teenager that I wouldn't have done. I think I was so convinced that she was going to be my wife, and this is how we're going to do. Like, this is how we're going to do it. I was putting way too much pressure on her on those kind of things, and I mean, she's like 17 years old, and I look back on it now, and it's just asinine to me, like the way I acted. So things started kind of just deteriorating pretty quickly. It started falling apart early 2015. And at this point, I'm away from my parents. I'm away from this church. I'm people are, playing drums for me here. Like I'm like, I've left this behind. Right. And it became pretty apparent that this wasn't going to work in Arizona. This thing that I fought so hard for, and I yelled and had arguments, and I broken people's hearts over this pride that I had. It wasn't working. And I remember the church that I was going to there in Arizona, I had my drum kit over there, and the pastor was nice enough to just kind of give me the key whenever I wanted. So I could just go up there and drum like super, like late at night. I fell into a pretty deep depression over all this, I just wasn't really sleeping much. Would go up to the church and drum like super late at night or early in the morning, whatever. There were some dark days, man. There were some real dark days of just what I perceived to be the rest of my life and my future with this woman and her family and everything. Just kind of in my mind, what could have made sense was gone. It was all falling apart. And that kind of left me, again, I'm 19. I mean, it's kind of dumb now, like looking at it from where I am now. But I think where I was, I mean, like that was all I knew. I had made that such a focal point of my life and sacrificed everything else to it. And that was gone. I had nothing left. My family was there, but I wasn't really seeing them anymore. Sleeping all day, going up and drumming and taking out my anger. And it just wasn't a good environment. It was some pretty dark days, man.
Yeah.
Some really, really, really dark days. I eventually reached out to it wasn't like I wasn't talking to my parents at all, but kind of eventually reached out to them and said, hey, I think I got to come home. And that was hard because I was kind of hit with reality pretty hard, right? It was like, hey, this isn't working. The last 4 or 5 years of my life is gone. What I thought my future was going to be is gone. I didn't have anything else. I had burnt bridges. I have ended relationships. I have said things I can't take back. And now I have to approach these people and say, hey, I messed up and I got to come home.
Did you ever have a moment where you felt maybe neglected by God, or like where was your relationship at this point? I know you're kind of astray, but
yeah,
was there any thought to him?
Definitely astray. I mean, I'm going to church, but it's more performative. I'm playing the drums there at the church for the band. But it's, my relationship with Christ is pretty shallow at this point. Like it's just kind of a routine,
association rather than
sure. Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I wasn't seeking him through this for sure. It's just kind of just wallowing, not being able to sleep, not really wanting to be awake. Because when I'm awake, I felt the anguish and the hurt of what was happening around me. Right. So it's just like, like as a 19-year-old, like it's like I felt like it's dumb to say, but at the time I felt like my life was ending.
Yeah.
So yeah, it got dark. It got real dark. My dad ended up driving out, and we got all my stuff together and ended up moving back to Texas in 2015. We moved back in with him, which was hard because I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to leave. I just defeated.
Sure.
I mean, utterly defeated. But so I'm back here in 2015. And, like I should have gotten right with the Lord and probably got more plugged in here and, made that the focal point and kind of leaned on the people here at Lake Worth Baptist Church. But I didn't do that. I have a tendency of having to learn things the hard way. So, we started, so I'm living with my parents and I have still some good friends of mine. I still consider friends, but I ended up moving in with them, I think later that year, or early 2016. And, it just complete spiral, right? I mean, still struggling with pornography. I'm about to turn 21. I'm already kind of drinking a little bit. We're throwing parties most weekends at this apartment that we are now renting. And it's just no moral compass, man. Like I look back and I don't like to talk about it. I don't like when it's brought up I hate when the whole situation about moving out there and the mistakes I made and prioritizing this girl, like I hate talking about it because it created so much pain for me and my family, like what I did to people. And I'll embrace it. Like I can't run from it. Like I get it, but it's I don't like talking about it, but it's part of what led me to where I'm at. So we're throwing parties, call it 40 weeks out of the year probably. I mean, that's what we did. Friday night, or most times Saturday night. Not really caring about it. I mean, at first it was just a few of us, and then it got to the point where it's like, friends invite friends that invite friends, and we're a 3-bedroom apartment with like 50 people in it, and who knows what's happening. I mean, I can't police what's being, passed around or what's happening in other rooms. I mean, it just got out of hand. It got crazy out of hand. And I didn't seem to care.
Mm.
The people that I lived with, they weren't believers. I supposedly was. And that is cause damage that lives on to this day, that I have to try to walk back and explain, and that created damage that and a testimony ruined that I still have to combat to this day, over a decade later. So, and that's happening. I'm, turned 21. I'm not really caring about that. I'm not, about drinking. I'm not caring about my purity at all. Just whatever. I don't care. Meanwhile, I'm coming to church here and pretending like I care. And you can only do that for so long. Like, it became pretty apparent that it wasn't working. I couldn't walk both sides of that fence. It became pretty apparent. And then eventually, I think my parents found out that I was kind of doing that stuff, whatever, and I ended up kind of walking away from this church for a little bit. Rightfully so. I mean, if you're going to be living that kind of life, and kind of destroying your testimony that way, like, you shouldn't be attached to a church and representing a church, especially
not repenting from it.
Yeah, sure, yeah, especially not being a worship leader in that church. Like, 100% was the right call, 100%. But at the time, I wasn't super happy about that. I think I understood it. I wasn't happy about it, but I understood. I don't know. I was indifferent. I was like, okay, whatever. So that continues to go on. We end up moving out of that apartment, moving other places, just kind of living this life of just kind of like just separation from the church and not really being involved in my family much anymore. And I just kind of distance myself, still kind of mad about what happened, in Casa Grande, in Arizona, with that all happening and moving back, and still kind of just festering in that, and like just mad, just angry at what happened. I didn't care. I truly just didn't care. We move a couple apartments, same behavior kind of thing. Nothing really changed. In 2018, because I had like nowhere else to go, kind of ran out of money, and living situation kind of deteriorated between one of my roommates, and I had to move into. We used to have a house here next to the church. Mm-hmm. This little white house, and was there forever. A lot of church members used to live in it, and just gave us kind of like the little house that we had. Anyway, I ended up moving into there, with my brother, which, I mean, I think that was kind of the first step out of that separation, I would say. It could have got a lot worse. I can, to back up a little bit, I never really got into like heavy drugs or anything like that. I'm not saying that I'm smart by any means, but like, I never really cared to try that. I was a little more scared than anything to do any of that. but there was some mild stuff. I mean, I remember I'll try to censor it as much as possible and be a little more high level here. But there was one time where me and someone I called a friend, I don't know if I would say that now, but he was really into that culture of just kind of like smoking a lot. That was kind of his thing. And I can count on one hand, how many times I ever did that. Was never really my thing. I didn't really care for it. But I remember one time he brought over something that was laced with something else, and he didn't tell me about it. And that was the end for that. Like, that was where I started putting some distance between me and him, and it was like, okay, like, and I was never like, it wasn't like I wasn't part of that culture. Like, it was always socially like, okay, whatever. I didn't really care for it, to be honest. But after that, I was like, okay, like, we're done with this.
Right.
So I started moving, past that. That was kind of like not really a wake up call, but it was like, okay, like, what are we doing here? Like, this is not a friend like I thought you were. This is different. Like, I'm not doing this. Like, hold up, pump the brakes a little bit. So eventually, we moved into that house next to the church with Bryce, my brother, and the environment was definitely better for sure. Right? It was definitely, I had more accountability there. Starting to go back to church at this point, getting more involved there. It was definitely steps in the right direction. Meanwhile, I'm still not really caring about my purity, still dealing with pornography. I mean, there's still stuff I'm still dealing with stuff. Like, I'm not, I'm still holding on to a couple things. That's just for whatever reason. So yeah, that's happening. I think, at some point, I think you moved in as well. I think we're pretty much at that point. And, yeah, I mean, things are getting better than they had been. I mean, that was kind of the dip, right? And then we're kind of going back up now, and we're, getting more involved in church. I think at this point, I probably started playing drums again for the main service. I'm kind of more involved, and, but still kind of living a mediocre life, man. Just not really committed, not super serious about it. And, I'm not really taking dating seriously, not really taking my walk with the Lord seriously at all. Just kind of coasting through life, I guess. Just kind of like, I don't know, no real direction.
Sure.
It was that way for a little while. I met my wife on a dating app. Because like for me, it was just like, I still like the thought of dating and maybe finding a wife eventually, but like, I don't go to anywhere where I would find anyone my age. Like, I just, whatever. I was on all the dating apps. So I found her on dating app. And it's kind of funny. Like, we kind of grew up in the same circles. She was like a little bit younger than me, like a year or so younger than me. So we knew a lot of the same people, and, started dating her actually about like 7 years ago, almost exactly. And, still not really caring about, purity and waiting for marriage. I mean, at that point, it's the last thing that I'm thinking about. Definitely haven't prioritized that in my life to this point. And, within, I would say about 45 days of me knowing my wife, Haley, turns out she's pregnant. And it was funny because she tells me like the week before we go to that church camp. So we go to a church camp every summer for a week. So she drops that bomb on me like Sunday evening before we go up there. So I'm having to deal with this. Like, okay, like the chickens have come home to roost. Like, it's getting real. I've known this girl for about a month and a half.
Yeah.
And here we are. And, I can remember feeling like every sermon that was preached at that church camp was like directed, like directly, like it was like completely relevant to what I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like it was like he knew. And I had to come to terms with it. And I think I did pretty quickly. I can remember pulling my dad aside that Thursday night and just telling him, like, I couldn't keep it in anymore. Like I had this knowledge. I had this huge earth shattering event happen a few days before, and I was just internalizing it and saying, I'm fine. No one needs to know. We'll figure it out. And dude, I mean, just like 3 or 4 messages, and I'm like, I have to tell somebody,
Mm-hmm.
or like I'm gonna explode.
That conviction was getting you.
For sure. So I ended up pulling him aside Thursday night and telling him, and I'll say this, my parents had a similar story, and from what I understand, my mom's parents didn't handle it the best way. No judgment, but that is what it is. But my parents did. I can remember telling my dad, and his first, he's like, okay. He's like, hey, he's like, I'm gonna have to tell your mom. I was like, that's fine. Can you wait until tomorrow? So we waited a day, and we told my mom, but they understood. Like they weren't happy about it, obviously, sure. But they didn't condemn me. There was no judgment. I couldn't ask for a better way to do it. I was scared. To tell people.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, it's just at this point, I look back on like the last years before that, it's just failure and disappointment and burning bridges and just being just terrible to people, taking advantage of people who've poured into me. So to get that kind of acceptance from my parents about it was, I didn't deserve that. I definitely didn't deserve that. But yeah, me and my wife, and we knew pretty early on that I think we wanted to get married, and this just solidified it. I had that kind of in the back of my mind, even after the first date. This could be the one for sure. This happened, and then I had a decision to make. Do we wait and have the kid and have the kid be there at the wedding, but maybe have a better looking wedding, or a wedding that we quote unquote wanted or whatever? Or do we try to maybe rush things and get married before the baby gets here, before she starts showing too much? Talked about it, and that seemed to be what we wanted to do. In my mind, that was it. For me, I didn't care the optics on me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like at this point, like I don't care. Like yeah. I've failed so many times. I don't care at this point, like how I'm viewed by people. Like at this point, I don't necessarily care. But for her, she's new to the church. Right? She started coming here almost immediately. She's new to the church. I wanted her to have some dignity. So if she was open to it, if she wanted to, I wanted to get married sooner than later, so she would still fit in her dress. So we wouldn't have our kid there. So that Addie, our first kid, would be born into a marriage. Like she wouldn't be, that was important. I wanted that. And it wasn't, it was by no means the most glamorous wedding. It was by no means pricey or extravagant by any means. We had it here in this church, which I look back on, which is like amazing to me. when I look back on, and we'll get there, more to come on this church for sure. But like looking at this church and what they've done for me personally and for my family, it's it's amazing.
Yeah, whenever it's like as you said, like I was living with you in that house, and I just remember.
Yeah, you were there for a lot of it.
At this point, yeah, I was there for a little bit of it, and I do remember that time at camp. Some funny situation happened. We were all unknowingly making fun of you. We could talk about that another time, but
let's tell it. So
okay, we'll tell
our listeners. So most of you guys know the story, but for whatever reason, pretty much the whole church who went with us, we decided to go like on a hike. And for whatever reason, we decided to go outside the perimeter of the campgrounds. We were warned not to. But everything's going fine. We're all kind of hiking out. We got to this area. We kind of doubled back, and we kind of like got lost from the trail. We couldn't find it, but we knew it was that direction. Like camp is that way, so we just kind of started roughing it through the woods.
Mm-hmm.
No trail at this point. We'll get to a spot where I can kind of see like a landmark from the campground, like kind of a little further away, like maybe 30, 40 yards. So I'm like, hey, it's this way. So we all start kind of walking that way to get back to the campgrounds and back to like a path. And I kid you not, I'm like 2 steps away. Like I'm like left foot, right foot, we're in the campgrounds. And my first step, my foot like falls through the ground. It like there's a crack, and I sink probably like 2 or 3 feet into the ground. And I step on a large hornet's nest that's been burrowed into this log in the ground. And there's probably like 20 people behind me. So I flip out.
Mm-hmm.
Flight or fight kicks in. I'm not fighting a whole bunch of bees. So flight was the option. And I remember I yell, it was like, there's wasps or bees or something. That's what I yell pretty loud. And then the fastest I've ever ran in my life, 100%. Book it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right behind me are the pastor's 2 young daughters. They chose fight, I think, instead of flight. I got out of there.
Yeah.
And they didn't. So they get stung a few times. I think I got stung like 8 or 9 times. They get stung a few times, and the joke was always like, I left them to die, and the bees and the wasps. Was funny because like now that I have a kid, like at the time I knew I was having a kid, so it was like.
But we were all telling you like you're gonna be a horrible dad. You left the pastor's daughter by herself, and we were just like messing with you. But that whole time you were dealing with this big news that you were gonna be a dad.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, but well, that is a funny story, and if Craig or Quentin, the guys who run camp, if you're hearing this, apologies. It's been 5 to 7 years now, so
statute limitations.
Yeah, the statute of limitations is gone. So, but yeah, just don't go off the path.
Yeah, there's a reason.
Yeah, there's a reason. There's
apparently
rules.
There's an actual reason they say that.
Makes for good stories later if you live to tell it, but probably not wise to do. Anyhow, I do remember, just how, I didn't know how scared you were, but I did know how serious the news was. And I remember, when we were living in this White House, I mean, you and I was about 2 years back into my being led astray. I think I surrendered to ministry at this point, or was about to. And so I was still in my young years of getting right too.
Sure.
So I mean, there was a lot of stuff that I knew about that. I didn't necessarily encourage, but I wasn't speaking up against it. But you say this dynamic that we had in this house, and I think we were all still finding our footing. I mean, we're like you're a little bit older than I am, and the rest of the guys that were in this house were probably like 18, 19 years old. So we're still trying to find our footing too, but I do think the dynamic was like God was working with it. even though we weren't 100%, just like committed, all of us just yet. There was still, like, we were all going to church and we were all making a point to show up and serve. And
Sure.
I think that the longer we were there, and we weren't there long, I guess like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I can definitely remember how it was when I first moved in and how it was when I moved out. And I know that all of our relationships, I think, together and then with God came out a lot stronger, even though it was a super bumpy ride through it.
Yeah, it wasn't perfect, but it definitely was steps in the right direction.
Yeah.
Definitely from where I'd been. And I think I just got to a spot where it was just like, I'm tired of it. Like, this isn't working. To like a similar aspect of like coming home from Arizona was having to step away from that life and saying, this isn't working as well. Like I just need to get close to the church. I just need to I need to move in with my brothers. I need to do something else. I have to. So it was definitely steps in the right direction. It wasn't perfect.
Yeah, it wasn't. I do think we were all being mischievous in our own way, but we were never like the party scene or the major drugs or sex or alcohol. Like, that was never really us anyway. So I think when we all moved in together, you were just like in this environment that was not like that. The lifestyle of that just wasn't existent.
It was much healthier.
Yeah. So even though we weren't 100% probably the greatest influences on each other at that time, definitely wasn't making ourselves worse. And I think the church honestly had a lot of help in that. Especially, when we get to my testimony, I'll talk a little bit more about, how I think I started taking things a little more seriously towards the end, when I did move out, because obviously you and Haley had Addie, or were about to have Addie at this point, and y'all were going to use that house. And then, we had another guy living there, Chase. He moved to.
It was crazy. We had like 4 guys living in that house.
4 guys in the house. The living right there's like 2 real bedrooms. I lived in the laundry room, and Chase lived in the kitchen. Like, those were our rooms.
It was crazy.
And I will say, it might sound a little ridiculous for me to be sleeping in a laundry room, but I made that room look good. Dude.
It was a big. It was a big room.
Nice. It was a lot bigger than a laundry room should have been. But anyhow, we're getting off a little bit. But the influence was better. And I do remember when you sat me and Chase down, you were about to tell us. I think we already knew. We knew something was up, because even though the news hadn't been brought up to everybody yet, we knew something was off. And I remember you sitting us down and telling us, and I remember thinking in that moment, like, one, I've known you forever. It seems like I think I came to know you guys when I was like 10 or something. So I've known you for a long time, but you were to me for the longest time, you were like the older brother that I didn't really thought liked me, and we didn't ever really talk. And so now that we got to this point of, like, you were telling me that you were about to have a child, and like, even though it was hard news for you to share, there was that part of me that was like, wow, like, it's nice to know that you trust me enough, to share this, or you cared enough to share this with me at that point. And then I did understand how hard that must have been to say. And, I know we were probably joking about it in that moment, but, I do, there was this thought that I had that I was like, love you. We're not going to judge you for it. We know you're trying to.
And I think that's a good segue. I mean, that's what I found. There was really no judgment from anybody.
Yeah.
Where I expected judgment, where there was probably warranted judgment. Mm-hmm. Never once. I mean, I found out a couple weeks after camp. I sat down with Zach, our pastor, and said, "Hey, this is what happened. This is what has happened. And I want to make this right. because I mean, like a sin like that, it's a very public sin. It's definitely would warrant some action by the church um, to address. And if if the person in question is not repentant and is wanting to stay in their sin and not willing to repent of it, then church discipline would have been enacted. But at that point, there was just when we found out, there was a sense of just like I can't hide anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's been stripped back. This is it's just raw, and it's just like I can't like I have to surrender here. I don't have any other course of action. So I mean, I talked to Zach and said, hey, I don't know what the right way to do this is, but I definitely don't want to run from this or stay here in this sin. I mean, like this is what we're doing to make it right, and I told him I'll do whatever I have to do. So the next week or the week after that, I came in front of the church, and Haley was there. She didn't come forward. No, she wasn't a member yet, but I mean, this is like she's been coming to church for less than a year. This is, I mean, new to her. I mean, I've been coming to this church forever. I can't imagine how she felt. You know, she's not a believer at this point. She's been coming for less than a year. She's pregnant. I think that the ladies of this church really stepped up. I mean, I think the whole church kind of accepted it. I mean, it's true reconciliation. I got up there, and nothing I did. I mean, I just said, hey, this is what happened, and I don't want to, I want to address it, and I want to turn from it, and with the help of the church and from Christ, I want to, honor this. I want to grow from this, and I don't want this to be something that separates us in unity as a church. After that, like I said, it was we made the decision to get married sooner than later. So the timeline's kind of wild here, right? I met Haley like this time, like right after Easter 2018. She we learned she was pregnant around July.
Mm-hmm.
No, 2019. I had my years messed up. It was 2019 because it all happened the same year. 2019, Easter, we found out, I met her. We found out she was pregnant around July. We were married end of September. So, I mean, going from a complete stranger to this is my wife in less than 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it was scary. I mean, it was the right decision. I still stand by it. I had a lot of weird looks, and my friends weren't really on board with it, and there was a lot of weird things, and there was never really a doubt in my mind it was the right thing to do. It wasn't the easiest thing to do.
Sure.
We kind of had to build a relationship from the ground up and kind of backwards than most people do.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I was done running from that kind of commitment. I was just done being scared. I was just done being just kind of flailing. I was just tired of it. So kind of tightened things up. We got married, and it was not easy by any means. We had Addie, my first kid, in February of 2020. So we are less than a year of me meeting my wife, and now we have a kid. It's wild. And this is probably, when I talk about moments in my life that were monumental or had some kind of meaning or pivotal, up until this point, the only other one I could absolutely say that was more than this would probably be my salvation. But at this point, I'm more serious than I was. I'm not like sold out or anything. I'm not really behaving like a husband should or a man should. I mean, like not a lot of responsibility, not a lot of accountability. I'm just kind of like I don't know. I'm a boy.
Yeah.
And anybody, I don't know if this is true to anybody else who's had kids, but there was, I mean, a distinct moment like that, a moment in time that I can point at and say, from this moment on, everything was different. Everything was different. I mean, as soon as that little baby girl came out and I held her and I looked her in the eye, everything was different.
Hmm.
It was the first time. Again, I think I have to learn things the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so hard. I hate that I'm that way, but it's been the pattern of my life, unfortunately. But I looked in her little eyes, and this is seconds after she's born. Right, she gets wiped off. She's handed to me just briefly before we put on Haley, or maybe afterwards. But I'm holding her. Her eyes are open. And I'm looking in her eyes, and it's like it's not about me anymore.
Yeah.
Whatever selfish pride I was hanging on to from all of it, middle school, high school, living waywardly, the last year of just kind of, being intentional about marriage and making it work and making it happen, but still not super serious about the accountability part of it and my walk with the Lord and how I'm going to lead my family. I'm just scared.
Sure.
Something happened that day. I looked in her eyes and it was, like I think most parents would say, like, hey, you see your kid and you're like, I would die for you. I'd literally kill anybody for you. Like, there's that for sure. But for me, it was like, it's not about me anymore.
Yeah.
And whatever I do now is for her. And then it also strengthened my marriage with my wife. But it was through Addie. It was through her and that experience. It was, again, next to salvation, I think the most pivotal point in my life where the 180 happened. And it was, okay, now I get it. Like, forget what I wanted, forget what plans I had, forget my own selfish pride. Like, these things are going to hurt this child. These things are going to hurt my wife. These things are going to hurt my now family. So everything changed.
I remember asking you, I think maybe it was a week or so before Addie was born. I don't know what we were doing. It was like me, you, Bryce, and someone else. We were all driving around town doing something it was something for the church. I can't remember what. But I do remember turning around in the car asking you, I'm like, you're about to have a kid in like a week, dude. How do you feel? You feel any different? And I remember you looking at me and you're just like, not really. Like, I'm just not really feeling it. And then, to hear you say now that, like, maybe you said that to me like the week before, but now in this moment that you're looking in the eyes of your firstborn child and it just flipped.
I don't think you're ever ready for that. And it's like, I think every first time parent probably goes through something similar. But I think for me, it was also at the same time of like God saying like, hey, knucklehead, like, get it together, bro.
Yeah.
Like before, like, it wasn't about you before either, but like now, like, there are consequences. Like, you are responsible for the life of this little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember thinking like, because immediately, like, it's weird because like I'm holding this little child, this little 7-pound child. I think she's less than that, like 5-pound child, tiny little baby.
Mm-hmm.
I'm holding her, and it felt like an eternity as I'm holding her, as these thoughts are going through my mind of like, what are you doing? Like, you're not the man, you're not the father she deserves.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? And then it's like kind of coming to realize that like, I mean, this is like all happening in seconds, but for me, it's like hours of just bam, bam, thinking through these things. I'm realizing that I'm not where I need to be. I'm not gonna right now, if she was older right now and she was able to retain things that were happening, I'd be ashamed.
Hmm.
I would be failing. Coming to realization that I need to be this little girl's example of what a future partner is going to be, a future husband's going to be. I'm going to be this little girl's example of what authority is, and what a father figure is, and what ultimately what relationship with God is like. I'm going to be this first glimpse in this child's eye of what her relationship later in life with her creator is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And coming to that realization, kind of like all at once. I've never had anything else like it. Not since, other than salvation. I mean, but even then, that was the salvation wasn't murky or muddy, but like I was young. I don't remember every single nuance of what happened. But here, this was clear as day.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying I was perfect after that. I
Sure.
wasn't. I'm still not perfect. But I can say that it definitely lit a fire in me
Mm-hmm.
that was not there before. And it changed the course of how I saw things, how I behaved, what I tolerated. Yeah, it was a pretty big point there.
So we get to this point where Addie's born. How was it for you during COVID quarantine? Because that was a month or two after she was born.
Yeah, it was wild. So I started a new job. Basically, it's funny. I signed the offer letter in the hospital. So I started like right after she was born. And great job. And but this is early 2020. So the world's about to shut down in like March, April. And it does. World shuts down. I was working in restaurants and franchising. Everything in North America closed. So it wasn't a lot to do. And I ended up getting furloughed pretty early.
Hmm.
And, I will say that COVID objectively overall was terrible, right? I no doubt.
Yeah.
My experience though was awesome. I have a newborn baby. I got furloughed. The government's handing out, unemployment benefits that are. I was actually making more on unemployment through the government than I was at my previous job.
Mm-hmm.
To stay home and watch my kid and spend quality time with my newborn. Like it was amazing. Like one of the best years of my life. It was great. And we ended up we drove out to Arizona with my family, brought her along. I mean, it was amazing. It was an amazing time. Lived with my brother and his wife at the time. Lived with them for a little bit. It was just a great time. I mean, it's odd because like it was the one time like I just didn't have to worry about work or finances. Like we would go to my parents' house every night and play Monopoly or do puzzles or, I mean, it was just, there was nothing else to do, right? No one was really working. There was no restaurants. There was no, like there just wasn't a lot going on. And I look back and like very fondly at that time.
It's good that, I mean, COVID was one of those things where either you were affected heavily by it negatively, or maybe you had like just a brief hit with it, or you weren't affected at all.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I had it. Like I had the first strain, and then like Delta or whatever came out the year after. Like it wasn't great. Like it was. I remember getting sick, and like everybody got sick here at the church. I remember that. Like it wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely different, and it kind of like, I don't know, like upheaved a lot of people's lives, and like it was very abnormal.
Yeah,
couple of years. But my personal experience with it wasn't really all that negative.
But it's good that you were able to, even though you were without a job, like money was still being provided.
Yeah.
Thankfully, depending on which aisle you're on and whether you agreed with that or not, whatever, it was provided to you and was able to give you a chance to not only not did you have like this child, but God gave you time. I mean, He used a bad situation to give you more time that unfortunately nowadays a lot of dads don't have the opportunity to do.
No doubt.
And I mean, even now, like you have two more after Addie. Recently, just a third.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. And I'm sure, like I know you spend a lot of time with your kids, but the opportunity that you had to spend more time with Addie when she was born, probably like it probably isn't like that now.
It's different.
Your third, it's definitely different.
It's different. It was a very unique situation that not a lot of working dads get to do.
Sure.
Now it's definitely privileged to be able to do it. But yeah, I look back on that time pretty fondly, and then kind of moving forward. I mean, like it's interesting because we kind of get past a lot of the dark stuff, and like I'm married. I have a kid. Things are going decent. Decent. Nothing terrible really. Getting more and more involved here. Still playing drums here, and we playing drums at a couple conferences that we go to in a church camp, and just kind of get into routine, which was really good for me to get into routine. But yeah, we ended up moving to an apartment. We found out that we were we moved in that apartment, and we moved into a house, the house that we actually live in now. Found out that we were expecting our second child, Amelia. Mills is what I call her. And she was born in March of 2023. Yeah, I mean, getting more and more involved here. I'm definitely getting more serious about my walk with the Lord and my Bible reading and my prayer life. And I mean, I just, there was kind of a moment of just like I'm not going back to what I was. There was a moment of like, I don't know, like I didn't need a reason, but like I was God placed a reason literally in my hands to change, and I took it. I took the opportunity. And then, we still live in that house. I guess the biggest notable thing is when we started this podcast around that time.
Yeah, I was just about to say 2023. You guys started thinking well. So, whose idea was it? Was it you or Tom's, or was it like how did thinking well start?
It was definitely both of ours. I think I had the idea for some kind of podcast first. I mean, I don't want to take credit for it necessarily, but I think if we had to put some credit on it, I think I had the idea first of just something like, hey, like there's podcasts are becoming bigger, and I think that we have things to talk about, and I think it would be a reasonable next step for the ministries of this church. So I approached Tom Clemens about it and church leadership and said, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Like, hey, would you want to have a co-host here? And this is kind of what we're wanting to do. And they were all for it. We started recording in this very room that we're sitting in now. And I mean, it was great. I mean, just being able to dive into God's word and talk about different topics or apologetic stuff, current events. I mean, it really helped me throughout my week kind of stay focused and grounded on spiritual things for sure. Just a little bit of extra, prep and conversation, outside of Wednesdays and Sundays.
And to give kind of, I guess, a spoiler warning, was thinking well sort of a catalyst for the decision you recently made?
Yeah, I guess we're about there. Yeah, I don't know if catalyst is the right word.
Might not be. It just
But I see where you're going. Yeah, I think it definitely was kind of like a launching point. Yeah, because like I really like recording the podcast, and I like putting stuff together for it. I like speaking publicly about faith and the Bible and things that we explore, and even this year, right? I mean, I guess we'll kind of wrap it up here, or kind of wrap it up, at least get to current here. But it's there's a preaching workshop that we do every year at this church. Been doing it for about a decade now, I think, and we're over that. Anyway, but there's a preaching workshop that we do here every February of the year, and it's we invite all kinds of pastors from all over the United States to come in, and there's some sessions that will help people come in and teach you how to be a better pastor, and we'll go over a few different seminars on certain things, outlines and technology and you name it, right?
Sure.
And I always had it under this impression that like you had to be a pastor to attend.
Understandably, preaching workshop.
Yeah, I just
pastor,
always assumed.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, cool. Like I'm not, so I don't go to that.
Right.
So cool. Well, like there's other people in the church that weren't pastors that went, and I was like, interesting. Okay. So like that's in the back of my mind, and I'm kind of I'm kind of struggling with like, hey, my vocation at this point in franchise sales isn't really panning out. Like I don't really see a future in this anymore, and that's becoming more and more apparent. So I'm thinking, okay, it's becoming more and more obvious that God doesn't want me here. I'm becoming more and more aware of and convicted that God has a greater purpose for me somewhere else, and I don't know what that is yet, but there is something that needs to change here, and I'm dealing with that. For a long time, I thought it was law enforcement. I was pretty convinced of that for a little bit, and then even this year, I mean, we're kind of basically into 2026 now, but I'm dealing with this conviction that like, hey, like I'm not where I'm meant to be. And I get a text. I'm at work. I get randomly a text from Zach, and he's like, "Hey, we have some more slots available for a preaching workshop. Do you want to attend?" And I said, "Yeah, like absolutely. Like at this point, like if the doors are open, like I want to be here." And I'm curious. Like, never been. I think I was necessarily qualified to attend. So sure, yeah, absolutely. I'll come check it out. And that kind of started like this like this line of dominoes really that started falling, and I'm thinking like, okay, like, so I texted Zach back and I said, hey, not sure if you want to send this to me or not, but basically asked like, why did you send this to me? He was like, hey, it might be good for you to attend, if you ever want to teach, or, just kind of see a few things or just see what you can learn. I'm like, okay. So I start praying about it. I mean, it's like heavy conviction that like, hey, like I'm searching for a career here. I'm searching for purpose, for longevity. I'm searching for there's something out here that right. But I don't, it's not illuminated yet. I don't see it. So I attend the preaching workshop this year, and I'm kind of like, God, could this be like a call to ministry, to be a pastor? I've always because I wrestled with that in the past for sure, and I thought I came to a pretty clear answer. Like, no, this is not really what the Lord wants me to do, and that might have just been suppressing the Holy Spirit. That might have been, just not listening to it and allowing it to come. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't the right time. I'm not sure. Maybe I mistaked that as a no answer when it was maybe not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I mean, I think that kind of turned out to be true. But yeah, I'm attending this preacher workshop and I'm just getting blown away. Like I'm learning things. I am locked in, and it kind of becomes apparent to me there as I'm sitting there Friday night that it's like, hey, I think this is legit. Like, I think this is it. And I remember talking to Tom about it Friday night. We sat next to each other at the preacher's workshop. And I was like, hey, man, just throwing it out there. I think that the Lord might be calling me to ministry, bro. And he was like, verbatim, his words, it's about time, bro. That's what he said to me. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, dude. He's like, of course he is. Like, you've been doing all this stuff, and you're like, and he said a few other things. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, dude, like, I've been praying about that. And other people in the church have been praying for you about that for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm just oblivious to this. Like, I have no idea this is even happening behind closed doors. So I'm like, okay. So what I decided to do Friday night, we ate dinner first, and we had our first the session of it. But then I decided, you know what I'm gonna do? And it's actually Tom recommended. He's like, hey, why don't you fast? Don't eat anything until like Monday. I was like, okay. Worst weekend to fast, because we had like barbecue, pulled pork, whatever, for like lunch Saturday, and then I think we had like a fellowship meal for like Sunday. It was like all the food that weekend, and I was like, oh man. But I decided to not eat. I think I ate Sunday, because at that point I like this
is my answer. I'm hungry.
This is what I'm doing, and I'm eating. But yeah, so I decided, hey, let's just slow down for a second. Let me fast. Let me pray about it. Let me tell my wife about it. Which I was kind of like telling her about how I'm feeling. Like I wasn't keeping anything from her, right? And so I talked to Zach about it Saturday evening towards the end of the preacher workshop, and he was like, "Okay." He's like, "Yeah." I mean, he's like, "Yeah." I mean, what you do now is you start testing it. You start sussing it out. He likes to use that word. He's like, "Hey, like, what was your wife's reaction to it? What are other people saying about it? Are things happening in the background that you had no idea that was happening?" And I'm like, check. All these things are happening. And I'm like, okay, that's odd. Haley, my wife, is on board. She's like, yeah, she was more on board than I knew before I did. She was on board with it. So now I'm like, okay, this is okay. Lord, if this is what you want me to do, it appears as we're there. And the only thing left for me to do is to surrender to it. So I told Zach, I was like, hey, I think I'm there, bro. Like, it wasn't this like miraculous, like I heard a voice and he said, be a pastor. Like, no, it was like, It was like just incrementally, like the pressure of conviction and saying, hey, like, this is the only logical conclusion here. What are you going to do with it? And at that point, it was like, okay. Like, I think at this point, Lord, it's undeniable. And I have two options here. I'm going to either suppress this like I did in the past. Didn't work out well for me. Or I'm going to, surrender it. Surrender any other ambition for anything else. And I'm going to just dive headfirst into this. So I told Zach that Saturday. And I believe that the next day, next Sunday, it might have been the one after that. I think there was like a guest speaker or something. But anyway, the next Sunday, the Sunday after, I came forward to the church and publicly surrendered to ministry, and it was amazing, man. The hard thing about it, as you know, is like you want to get started immediately. You want to dive in and be like, all right, give me a congregation, let's go.
Yeah.
But it takes time. So like I'm excited for what the future holds, and I basically catches us up to where we are here in April of 2026. But it God willing, I'm going to be a pastor.
Amen.
And I look back, on this whole journey, this whole story that I just told, this roller coaster that has been the last 20 years of my life. it's hard because sometimes I get like imposter syndrome where I'm like, I don't deserve this.
Right.
Sometimes it's hard because I don't let it affect me anymore like it did. But there's, that's the thing about sin, right? Like, you're saved from it. The Christ, even loved ones, this church forgives me for stuff that I've done. But the consequences, they remain.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a lot of what folks have a hard time understanding is like, I can't take back what I said to my parents and, leaving. I can't take back how I treated people in Arizona, this girl in Arizona, and how that fractured relationships. I can't change that. I can't change the way I behaved to my friends. Some of them that I'm still friends with today. I can't change the destroyed testimony during those years to them that now I'm trying to repair. I'm trying to lead them to Christ. But they've seen me at my literal worst.
Mm-hmm.
I can't change that, right? I can't change who I was. But it gives me a reason to bring it up. It gives me a reason to witness and say, as most people that we've had on here who've had testimonies like this, there's a but God moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a, hey, I was this bad. You've seen it firsthand. I was this bad. I'm sorry for who I was, and let me introduce you to who changed me.
Amen.
Let me introduce you to the reason why I'm not that way anymore, and help and Lord, help me live a life that's an example. Help me stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard because there's a lot of regret, things I wish I could take back. I don't let it affect me. I wouldn't say that it's something that I struggle with, but the consequences remain.
Sure.
And you do have to deal with that.
Well, you're exactly right. We all have low moments, and I will say I've had the privilege to know you for a very long time, since we were very
You've had the
young,
privilege of seeing all my mistakes and not doing them.
and then seeing other people's reactions because of those mistakes, but also seeing the amount of love that people have for you behind the scenes. The things that you said that you didn't know, like your mom cried in that moment, that you messed up, or like you didn't know that Tom, me, Zach, and so many other guys were praying for you, because we all knew that God was calling you for this when you had absolutely no idea at the moment.
I was oblivious to it.
God will take, when I say this, I've said this on the podcast before, I'm sure, but God will take anything in your life and use it to give him glory. And whether that be your lack of repentance, to be an example of what not to do,
Sure.
or to repent and to follow him and yield to him and surrender to him, that both those paths bring him glory one way or another. And to be able to see, just as we've grown up together, I think if you told 9-year-old me, that you and I would be on a podcast together talking about Jesus, I'd probably laugh in your face.
Oh, at the time, I would have absolutely laughed in your face.
Would have made no sense to me. But the reason we both sit here, and the reason why you have come to this place in your life, the reason why you've looked into your daughter's eyes and have had that switch flip, and everything that has happened in your life, good or bad, has all been to change you to come back to him. And so even there are things there that you regret and you can't take back, you've did what a lot of people do, a lot of people haven't done, and you have learned from it, and you've learned to, not make those mistakes again, or to grow from those mistakes, even if you have to touch the stove just to believe it's hot when someone's told you that it's hot, even if you have to learn the hard way, the fact that you notice anyway that, this was bad for me, and I realize that now you can use this bad part of your testimony and use it for good. And that's something that no unbeliever can do.
That's true. It's, I've definitely come to learn that about myself. Maybe it's like a firstborn kind of thing, hard-headedness or whatever.
Sure.
But I definitely have to touch the stove, and I'm working on getting better on like not having to do that. But it's hard because in those moments, it was always like in opposition or fighting the plan that the Lord had for me. And, I look back at this roller coaster and I agree. There's beauty in the messiness. There's beauty in what it turned out to be. This dichotomy of like, hey, this is where you were. This is where I saved you from that. Mm-hmm. This is where I am now. I think it's helpful. And, I would say, kind of as we close, I want to address the verse that you read. It's probably some of my favorite verses in the Bible. If I had to pick like, hey, what's your life verse? What's your favorite verses in the Bible? I would probably land there. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of another change that happened to me. And it's actually kind of echoes a little bit kind of what Tom said on his podcast about becoming more serious about kind of protecting your family and being kind of that like a protector as a man of your household. Because I think like manhood, becoming a man, isn't an age thing. There are plenty of examples of people in their 30s or 40s that I wouldn't consider men. They act like boys. I think you become a man when you completely surrender not only to Christ, but when you surrender to the well-being of the people who depend on you over your own needs. Mm. It's those two things in tandem that make you a man. Nothing to do about age. It's more of a maturity thing, a spiritual maturity thing. But in that, I started getting more serious about protecting my family, training to protect my family. And I won't spend much time here, but the reason why that verse resonates so much with me is there's like two things I heard that really kind of drove deep into me. I think we mentioned on the podcast a couple of times, but I do believe that Christian men should be the most fearless, most adamant about preserving life, people on the planet. If you are a Christian man and you're truly saved and you know where you're going, there is no victory in death. Death has no sting. Yeah. That resonated with me. I serve in several capacities here now, with the music stuff, this podcast, security team. And it's true. I'm not scared of dying. I would say the two top biggest fears of people, funny enough, is like public speaking and death. Like public speaking is like higher in most people. It's funny. People would rather die than like speak in public.
That's funny.
But I know where I'm going. I'm not scared of death. Death has no sting. I'm saved from the second death, the eternal death. I was saved from that when I was 7. Mm. And there was times where I doubted it, and I had to reassure myself. And I even said on the podcast with our pastor Zach that there's times where I had to like stop myself and say, okay, yeah, I believe that. Okay, I'm good. If I wasn't saved before, I am now. I'm good. Right? Like there's several times in my life where I've been there. But there's also the first death. We all have our time. I'm not gunning for it. I'm not looking forward to it. But I'm not scared of it.
Yeah.
Because I know where I'm going. For me, as Paul said, to die is gain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking forward to it. I don't want to. I don't have a death wish by any means, but I'm not scared of it. And I think that as an encouragement, if I can, to like Christian men, young men, if you will, like if you know where you're going, like get that figured out first for sure. But you have a duty to protect those around you.
That's right.
And yourself and your families. You got to step up to it. You got to embrace it. You have to, especially in today's world. You have to.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of where I'm at now. It's just I'm real heavy into that. Hopefully, just go to seminary soon. Start becoming formally trained to become a preacher. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited, man. I'm excited to where the Lord's leading me and my family. It's been a while since I've kind of like flushed my complete testimony out from like start to finish. But it's really amazing what God can do in your life if you let him.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how he can change you if you let him.
Amen. Well, Kyle, thanks for sharing your testimony. There were things that I learned that I never knew, and so it was good to kind of just see where your head was at, even in some of the parts that we were literally living in the same house.
Sure, yeah.
So, but hey, man, I love you, and I'm very blessed to have you in my life.
Yeah, man.
And to be
I
on
think
this podcast with you.
No, for sure. I think what's funny is there was kind of like an age difference growing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were way closer to like Cameron and Bryce, right? But I think that it's been interesting to see like our friendship kind of blossom as well. Like you're one of my closest friends, bro. And like
made the cut. Let's go.
Yep. But and that's the way it should be, man. Like I have friends outside this place, outside the Lake Worth Baptist Church, but my best friends are my dad, my brothers, you, my pastor. I think a healthy church fosters that, and that naturally is what happens
for sure
in a healthy church.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really find something like this without God. You really don't. And so, the fact that we're sitting here and we're talking, and we're we have this relationship, and we've gotten to this part as friends, as brothers, that's something only God can do.
It's special, man. Special for sure.
Sure.
Well, Nick, tell them where to find us.
You can find us at Hammer and Quill Publications on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to reach out to us, you can just email us at podcast@lakeworthbaptist.org. And if for any of other information that we have, you can find our episode description, along with links to other episodes that might have relevance to this one. If you haven't noticed, in other podcast episodes, we usually link a bunch of resources that we'll use, or links to other podcasts that we reference. And so take a look at those. And there's some information for you to look at, so you can kind of fact check us on some of our apologetic stuff. But yeah, so if you want anything for resources or service times or any of our other podcasts for Hammer and Quill, just go check it out down there.
Yeah, perfect. No, we'd love to interact with you, to minister to you guys in any way possible. We'd love to hear some feedback and maybe hear from you in person if you attend to Lake Worth Baptist Church. But yeah, we'll see you next week on Thinking Well Podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.